So the main reason that the E-tube has been placed is to give nutrition to your pet. So you're going to want to refer to your discharges because each animal is going to have a different calorie requirement. But the main thing is that it is a soft diet, a not quite liquid diet, that the blending instructions will be included in your discharges. Often it's 1 can of whatever food your doctor thinks that you should have mixed with a certain amount of water and blended in a blender. So the consistency is usually that of a sort of watered down pudding. The important thing is that it is able to be pushed easily through a syringe. So you're going to go home with a variety of syringe sizes based on the total volume that your pet is going to need. There is usually a ramping up period. So again, refer to your discharges. Like I have here, this pet at first, we're going to do 40 mils every 6 hours. And then on the second day, we're going to slowly increase that in order to get 60 mils every 6 hours being the calories that this pet needs in a day. So the first few days to a week, there's going to be multiple smaller feedings while they get used to it. And we want to do each feeding fairly slowly. Some pets take longer to get used to it than others, but I usually say over at least 10 minutes. Sometimes at first they do require a little slower, so it can be like 20 minutes or so. So you're going to want to get your food ready, get all your syringes ready. I usually like to have a cup of warm water, not hot water, that I can draw from. I think having everything prepared before you even sit down with your pet is a good idea. That way you're not in the middle of it and you realize you forgot something. And again, it should be a very stressless interaction. This is a long term. We can have these tubes in 2-3 months, and so we want to start off making it a positive experience. That way, again, it's not a big ordeal. The cat's hiding under the bed and you're just trying to get this feeding done. Just make it a nice opportunity to cuddle while you feed them. The first step is going to be to release the tube. They have a little cap on the end here that just twists off. Some of them have a little piece of plastic that keeps that attached because it's really easy to lose this. So first step, put that someplace where you're going to be able to find it again. And then this is where my cup of warm water comes in handy. So I'm going to, Polly here doesn't actually have a stomach, so I'm not going to actually drop any water, but we're going to pull up about 6 mils here, and we're going to always start with water just to check if they're going to react to it, if the tube has shifted and it's no longer comfortable for them. And you're going to do it nice and slow, but since it's water, it doesn't have to be quite as slow as the food. And then pay attention to how your pet reacts. So if they become restless, if there's any coughing, any signs of nausea. So if they just start drooling or really like lip licking, and then obviously if they vomit, we're going to just hold on everything. They shouldn't have that strong of a reaction to the water. So if they're doing that with water, then we don't want to go forward with any medications or food at that time. If that goes well, they're comfortable, they have no reaction, we can move on to our food. So again, it's going to be different depending on how far along in the process of the slowly ramping up is. Eventually the goal is to get the feedings down to larger amounts less frequently with a total calorie intake of the day. So We're going to make sure that our food is also well blended, but also if you've refrigerated it, like made a large batch of it and then refrigerated it, we want to make sure that it is, again, at least room temperature. I don't recommend microwaving it just because it can create sort of hot spots and get too hot. What I'll usually do is I will load it up in my syringe and then do a warm water bath with that syringe, sort of like you've seen with baby bottles or whatever. And so the reason we do that is because they can be less reactive. If it's very cold or very hot, they're going to feel that going down, and they're going to have more likelihood of making them nauseous or just generally reacting to it. So we want it to be nice and warm. And then we're going to, again, just very slowly, once we have our syringe all filled, we're going to switch that on. And, you know, they're just hanging out, cuddling, not a big deal. And so depending on, you know, the volume that we're shooting for, and how your pet has reacted, we're just going to do it real slow. You can watch some TV. Some people like to math it out. So our goal being 80 mils over 10 minutes, they're going to math it out. It's not necessary to be that precise. I always recommend sort of thinking about, you know, how your pet would normally eat. So they take a bite and they swallow it and it moves down their esophagus into their stomach. So about that long, and then 1 mil. And then they take another bite and then 1 mil. So just make it as natural as possible, because where this tube ends, it doesn't go directly into the stomach. It stops in the esophagus, and there is a sphincter that keeps the stomach and the esophagus separate. And this opens and closes sort of like a door. And so if we go too fast, that food is going to not be able to get through that door, and it will build up in the esophagus, and it may cause them to vomit if you go too quickly. Once we're done feeding, it is important to, again, flush with some warm water. You can do 5 mils. If your pet is low on hydration, sometimes your doctor will recommend doing more. Again, refer to your discharges. The important thing is to flush with water to avoid any clogging, because this tube is going to be still filled with the food that you just put in there. So we want to make sure that this is nice and clear with water to make sure that that food doesn't sit in the tube and cause a clog later on. And again, it's nice and slow with your warm water. When we're done, we close up the cap, put it back, and you're good to go.